Good afternoon, Your Excellencies and ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome you to the final session of this conference, and we will wrap up some of the important messages given throughout the day by our renowned speakers, and we will provide the concluding remarks of the event. So my name is Pelin Ayan Musil, and I'm a senior researcher at the Institute of International Relations in Prague. It is an honor for me to chair this panel. We have very distinguished three speakers. First, Her Excellency Ambassador Mrs. Ismat Jahan, a permanent observer of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation to the EU. And second, His Excellency Hamid Reza Arshadi, former ambassador of Iran to Romania. And third, we have Dr. Ryan Schneider, Director of Foreign Policy Analysis and Planning at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic. So first, I would like to give the floor to Her Excellency Ambassador Mrs. Ismat Jahan, a permanent observer of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation to the EU. You can come here. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairperson, distinguished participants, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. At this late hour, it's a big challenge to crave your patience and especially asking you to listen. You all have been sitting very patiently throughout the day. Let me begin by thanking the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Czech Republic, the Institute of International Relations Prague, group of OIC ambassadors based in Prague, and the Anna Lindh Foundation for this opportunity to represent the OIC in this important forum. This being the 6th annual event, it testifies the continued commitment of the Czech government and the associated institutions and groups that I've named to highlight the importance of interreligious and intercultural dialogue in advancing peace, trust, and social harmony. We would certainly hope that such initiatives are also replicated in other European capitals, and why not elsewhere. I have listened very carefully to all those important contributions made throughout the day. The underlying message that I had noted is that cultural and religious diversities can coexist in peace and harmony if, I'm saying if with a capital IF, we are able to transform prejudices and fear into mutual understanding and respect. Building trust among communities is essential, not only at societal levels, but also in relevant political and diplomatic discourses. Diplomacy and intercultural and interfaith dialogue fits very well in countering divisions, embracing diversities, promoting reconciliations, as well as in preventing new fault lines. His Excellency Miguel Moratino has explained it so well in his presentation. Well, he did mention that he doesn't really believe in cultural diplomacy, but let's say that use of cultural tools as soft power can be very important in bridging gaps between cultures and promoting understanding among diversities, not only through literature, but music, theater, cuisine. And that reminds me that thanks to all the embassies who have offered us their distinct cuisines during lunch today. This is also a way of showcasing different culture and bringing us together and appreciating each other. Ladies and gentlemen, as many has noted today, tension and distrust continue to dominate interrelationships between cultures and civilizations. In parallel with the growing trend of Islamophobia, there is anti-Semitism and other forms of racism and discrimination. The rising levels of extreme far-right politics and populism polarize the society further by strengthening the dangerous narrative of us versus them. On the other hand, it is needless to emphasize that in a globalized world today, many of us are products of two or more religions or culture, as His Excellency, the Distinguished Ambassador of Nigeria, has recounted through his personal experience. The bottom line is, there is more that unites us than which divides us. What often is regrettably missing is the genuine political will to bridge the gaps. On the contrary, we see the urge to use the infamous principle of divide and rule in many societies and in many countries. As many of you are aware, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation is not a religious organization. It's a political body of 57 member states covering 4 continents, including Europe. Promotion of interreligious and intercultural dialogue remains an integral part of the organization's strategy to foster respect for diversity and peaceful coexistence. In our opening session, His Excellency, the Ambassador of Turkey, has already referred to many of the priorities of the OICs. I would only highlight some. Situation of Muslims in non-Muslim countries is a priority concern of the organization. The OIC remains deeply concerned by the growing Islamophobia and hate crimes against Muslims witnessed in various parts of the world, including in Europe. Islam is often misperceived as a threat to gender equality, freedom, and democratic norms and European values, as for example. Phobia, as in the case of Islamophobia, is an irrational fear, most often triggered by ignorance and misinformation. Sometimes, such fear of the so-called other is also deliberately triggered by far-right populism for self-serving political gains. We have seen that the COVID-19 has also generated new forms of ethno-cultural and religious discrimination, most prominently targeting Muslims and immigrants for its spread. The current focus on Muslims as terrorists, criminals, and unwelcomed migrants have further contributed to the polarization of societies. On the other hand, it is admittedly true that radicalized elements and terrorists also exploit the name of Islam in promoting their narrow interest. Consequently, this triggered anti-Muslim hatred and further alienate the great majority of the Muslims who believe in peaceful coexistence. I attended recently a roundtable on the impact of the war on terror and counterterrorism policies on fundamental rights and civic space of Muslims. It was indeed disturbing to hear about the growing religious profiling and targeting of Muslims or those perceived as Muslims in the name of national security. Let me stress that the OIC rejects all forms of violence and extremism, including those committed in the name of religion. Terrorism has no religion. Similarly, the activities of bigoted individuals and groups who incite hatred and violence, insult or ridicule sacred symbols, and defame religions must never be condoned. Like many, We believe that freedom of expression or speech is not an absolute right. It is subject to special obligations and responsibilities. Ladies and gentlemen, the mindset that all Muslim and Islam as a religion are collectively responsible for terrorist acts committed by some is a flawed inference. What is most often overlooked is the fact that for example, among the European Muslims, there are many, and I would stress many, who are contributing to the society on a daily basis as important and law-abiding citizens, as doctors, engineers, construction workers, restaurant owners, so on and so forth. We believe that in order for interreligious and intercultural dialogues to have deeper impacts, it must be structured and conducted in a manner so as to reach the grassroots of society. This point many of you have highlighted. It should be through educational programs, starting right from the very early age of an individual, and through the responsible use of media, particularly the social media. A collaborative approach is needed involving religious actors, faith-based organizations, community leaders, the civil society organizations, politicians, and policymakers in fighting prejudice and promoting social inclusivity. Engaging the youth in this process is extremely crucial. The OIC has been maintaining close interactions with the UN Alliance of Civilization and CAICID towards promotion of greater harmony. The organization actively supports the Istanbul process. You already have heard about it. And what is really missing is its full and effective implementation of the Istanbul process. We must reinvigorate the process. The OIC is also part in a number of networks to create peace at the grassroots level in areas of conflict. For example, in southern Philippines, Myanmar, Central African Republic, Mali, and Nigeria. I should emphasize that the OIC's strong priority focus remains on the cause of Palestine. The organization has consistently urged for revival of the Middle East peace process through meaningful dialogues. Meaningful would mean genuine dialogues, including by reinvigorating the quartet, of which the EU is a key actor. The OIC is in the process of having an MOU signed with the Vatican's. This is a follow-up of the meeting between the Secretary General of the OIC and His Holiness Pope Francis. Ladies and gentlemen, as we seek protection for Muslims living in the West and beyond, we must also be prepared to give same treatment to minorities living in Muslim countries. And I can say that the OIC as an organization is underscoring itself to safeguard the protection of those religious minorities or communities in other countries. In its keenness to foster relations with the European country, the OIC has signed an MOU with the EU, with the European External Action Service. We are in regular dialogue, and we are happy that some important steps have been taken at the European level, including by appointment of a coordinator for combating anti-Muslim hatred, declaration of September 21 as an European Day Against Islamophobia by the Council of Europe, and also organizing webinars to improve media reporting on Muslims and Islam. I will say that, what is important is their implementation of these legislations and programs adopted at the EU level to be implemented in full and effectively at the national level, which is very important in the EU member states. Well, I say that while expression of solidarity with the organizations who are present around, and also the Czech Republic present around this room, we must undertake concrete measures to bring about real change on the ground through result-oriented discourse. This is also an issue that has been highlighted today. In closing, I'm tempted to quote from a poem, The Ballad of East and West by Rudyard Kipling. Many of you might be knowing he is a famous British colonial era author. He had written this in 1889, during the height of British colonial period in India. The most quoted first line says, "Oh, East is West and West is West, and never the twain shall meet, until earth and skies stand together at God's great judgment seat. But there is neither East nor West, nor country, nor class, nor race, when two strong men stand face to face, even though they each come from a different place." What in essence Kipling was stating was that cultural, racial, and religious prejudices are only excuses for the weak, but great humans fight out the differences and choose to coexist as equals. I thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Mrs. Excellency. Your speech indeed refers to many of the points that were raised today. And today, indeed, we discussed that religion can be a powerful tool for building trust, but oftentimes it also plays a destructive role when its values and symbols are misused by the extremists and the populists. It has the power to play a positive role in societies, and several religious organizations take the initiatives to do so. But it also is used as an instrument to create distrust between cultures for political reasons. As Mrs. Excellency and other speakers throughout today mentioned, maybe the question of how religion can be helpful in building trust sometimes comes secondary to the question of how to prevent the usage of religion as an instrument for escalating conflicts. I would like to give floor to our second speaker, but I was told that we are having technical difficulties to connect with Mr. Arshadi, but he is now with us. That's great news. So I will now give the floor to His Excellency Hamid Reza Arshadi, former ambassador of Iran to Romania and senior advisor to the Institute of Political and International Studies in Iran. So, Mr. Arshadi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Almighty. Let me first thank the organizers for providing me the opportunity to participate in this hybrid conference online to share my idea and contribute to the main theme of today and benefit exchanging views and experiences between distinguished participants. I would like to make a few brief remarks about the importance of trust at individual and community level. Trust, with its many social, political, economic, and psychological functions, plays an important role in the context of group actions and interactions. Human life without the sense of self-trust, trust to the future and the world around, will be surrounded by unbearable anxiety and conflict that can cause a person and society to collapse. Trust facilitates the growth and flourishing of humankind and ability and transform one's relationship with others and the world into a creative and prosperous relationship so that one can experience peace, security, freedom, and independence alongside others. Therefore, trust is one of the most basic components of interactions in today's society. And when social trust is eroded by various factors, social order and cohesion also face challenges. Studies suggest that social trust varies between different groups and strata. The scale and level of trust in the strata and groups in various social, political, economic, and cultural conditions, and even at different times, show that social trust is affected and is a function of many diverse variables. Compared to other groups, trust building in groups that are somehow related to cultural, educational, and religious institutions or faith-based organizations. The root of this can be found in the components of trust building that are related to religious teaching on the one hand and to public beliefs on the other. Honesty, faithfulness to their covenants, sanity, benevolence, stability of thought and behavior, preference of spiritual matters to material ones and betrayal, and avoidance of other moral vices are among these components that accumulation of some of these components in each person formed high social status and prestige, and it builds the community's trust in those who deserve it. Religion has a set of beliefs, ethics, laws, and rules that are used to manage the affairs of human society and the upbringing of human beings, since its emergence has played an irrepressible role in the coexistence and peace of society and interactions among various global institutions, and has played an inalienable role in determining the fate of different civilizations and countries. One of the important roles of the Prophet is to establish and setting up social and individual justice and moderation, that is, to implement justice in individual life and to establish social justice. Since man is a creature with different tendencies, and these tendencies are in conflict and incompatibility with each other in human society, if he wants to be in harmony with all of creatures that live in a wonderful order and get rid of these tensions, they must be faithful to divine law, abiding and acting in it, and respect the rights of others, and convince, founding and acting in it, and convince, founding and breeding elements of social capital to be based on innate common religious grounds which are solid enough to strengthen connections between individuals and communities. Consequently, with the decline of the diverging prime causal factors, inevitably comes the decline of the greater tension and conflict. One of the most important functions of religion throughout history has been to build social trust and confidence, and the more religious and moral values are strengthened in societies, the more predictable the behavior of the individual, because people behave within certain rules and can trust more to each other, and therefore social relationships are smoother and less costly. Of course, religious teachings have a two-pronged role, and those who connected personally and socially to religious teachings are those trusted and trust others more. But in transition, this function is vacant before modern values are replaced. Thus, in the transition period, traditional values are weakened, while the values of modern world have not yet replaced them, and this is basis for the weakening of social trust. We witness in even many religious and transitional societies who have entered the modern era by preserving a large part of its traditional heritage, the collapse of traditional values and the lack of replacement of modern values have become more pronounced and have a greater impact on society. According to some experts, there is a lot of evidence to indicate a decrease in social trust in all. The relationship between religious values and national interest in foreign policy is one of the topics on which international relations experts disagree. Some believe that foreign policy have always been based on national interest and only sugar-coated and lip service by religious appearances. Why? Others believe that this values is one of the pillars of foreign policy, and often national interests are used to justify and rationalize these policies. So it may be difficult to issue a general ruling in this regard, and the answer is vary in different periods. It seems that what makes religious trust building can play a significant role in the future communities is the practical rejection of concept of domination by hegemonic systems in pursuit of their own policies and interests. In Islam, we believe what causes the trust between the two countries to be damaged is not necessarily the religious or racial diversity or even the belief and culture, but mainly the non-adherence to the covenants that promote peaceful coexistence and peace. Having this kind of trust, it's going to be important that we will double our efforts to build new forms of connectedness in the face of growing different types of diversity. Another factor that exacerbates extremism and violent confrontation with other countries is the belief that the whole truth is on one side without any verification. Since all divine religions originate from one source, namely God the Almighty, and the purpose of the teachings of the Prophet is to provide a platform in which human excellence and evolution are best achieved, citing the commonalities of the divine religion is the best guarantee for negation of hostility, blind criticization, and consequently gaining trust. Obviously, until these concepts are achieved in one community, one cannot expect trust to be established between different communities. In Islam, what is very important is the preservation of human life. That is why it is stated in the Holy Quran that whoever is slain a soul, not to retaliate for the soul slain, nor for corruption done in the land, shall be as if he had slain mankind together. Returning to the spirit of religious spirituality, especially in the sphere of diplomacy, which is the place of protection of interests at any cost, has a great impact on the spread of friendship and at least the denial of violence. If the statement of great Iranian poetry said human beings are members of the whole creation of one essence and soul is accepted and practiced by all communities, we can undoubtedly expect future communities to interact with each other more than before, away from various prejudices. Because in Islamic thought, the ultimate future of the world, i.e. end time, unlike many other schools of thought, including secular thinkers who believe in Armageddon or apocalypse, is peace and tranquility of mankind, having a strong and firm will to reject domination, oppression, and coercion is an irrepressible prerequisite for approaching this situation. A strong requirement in achieving this goal is the avoidance of unilateralism, especially in international arbitration and peacekeeping institutions. And this cannot be achieved except by respecting the fundamental rights of all human beings and communities who are the supreme divine creature of God Almighty in religious teaching, and there is no inherent superiority between them by any racial, ethnic, tribal criteria, and so forth. In recent decades, the world have witnessed great world wars and many conflicts that have troubled the conscience of every awakened human being. In all of these cases, there are several reasons for these conflicts to begin and continue. But at the same time, despite their familiarity with, spread, and generality of ethics and spirituality, sometimes prevalent in statements and writings, what confronted humanity with this sinister phenomenon was oppression and ignoring of human rights. In this regard, the practical and relatively short-term solution to eradicate stigma in all of its many forms is not simply to produce religious and moral literature on trust building, but the recommendation of faith-based organizations must penetrate the sphere of government, and there must be accordingly a tangible sign of believing and acting by them, which emerged in its final stage in the field of diplomacy with mutual trust among involved parties. I believe the whole inside conference permitting and strengthening it as an international discourse can help greatly in spreading this idea. To this end, according to the well-known saying that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, scientific and religious centers must take the initial phase and hope that this belief will become common in the near future. Thank you all for just paying attention.
Thank you, Mr. Arshadi.
Thank you.
We had some like hearing problems, but we were able to follow more or less what you were saying, and I was told that our audience, online audience, was able to follow you much better than we did here. So finally, I would like to give the floor to Dr. Ryan Šnaidauf, Director of Foreign Policy Analysis and Planning at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic. Dr. Šnaidauf, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I need to get it right. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to speak to you at the very end of the conference on behalf of the Czech Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I can promise I will be really brief. There is anyway little to add at the end, and I feel that this has been one of not so many important events taking place around the world on these topics. We are living in a world more and more interconnected, where, however, sadly, the cultural, religious, ideological gaps are not automatically bridged by these interconnections. So we have interconnectedness, but still persisting divisions and gaps. As was mentioned already, the pandemic, COVID, could have been a great uniting experience for mankind, a shared experience across the world, but it ended up in the end being even more divisive. So what can we do? The foreign minister at the onset of the event today set out the topic of the conference, namely the importance of building trust. And he spoke, I believe, about some of the principles key for that. The effort, the honesty, the commitment, the care, the opening up to each other. I will simply add one more, and that is empathy. Empathy, which leads to understanding for each other, which leads to a better quality dialogue based on respect for one another. Speakers during today, on their part, offered quite a number of recipes themselves. Let me mention, we need to prevent religions and cultures and identity from falling hostage to conflict narratives. It is political agendas that instrumentalize or utilize religions and cultures and identities. It is not that our identities drive us to conflict. So I think that's really important to keep in mind. There should be a new type of transcendency of religions vis-a-vis one another, a new level of reaching out to each other. We should not be confusing righteousness with self-righteousness, a point which I remembered as a crucial one. And mentioned not long ago, religious leaders need to work hand in hand with diplomats to transfer talks into strategies, decisions, and rules. So, the concluding words, my feeling is that this has been a really meaningful conference and event, and I feel rather sure that the new incoming government in the Czech Republic and the new incoming foreign minister, whoever it is in the end, we are still not sure, but I feel rather confident that they will maintain this tradition of these events for the years to come. With that, I would like to thank you all participants here for, being here, listening, taking part, being part of the events. I want to thank particularly the speakers for their contributions, and of course, very special thanks to those who made this all possible. Be it, of course, the Institute for International Relations as the organizing institution, be the organization of Islamic Conference and all the allied associated embassies, be the Anna Lindh Foundation, but also of course, my colleagues from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, notably the two Roberts, Řehák and Jarkovsky, and all the others. This is it, and peace be upon you from whichever religion you come. Thank you.
Distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen, we are now at the end of our conference. Just a few things that I would like to say to wrap up. Today we have discussed that theological dialogue, interreligious dialogue is important. And one of the main things the religious leaders can do is to make the use of religion in conflicts difficult. And that they can emphasize the universalities of religion, not the particularities. There are several positive developments, successful examples of interfaith and cultural dialogue, and many endeavors have been cast by the religious leaders at local and international levels. But in our conference today, we have also learned that these dialogues cannot alone lead to peaceful conclusion. And as our distinguished speakers stressed, religion needs autonomy from the state. It requires its independence. And the state authorities can open up neutral spaces in which different religious institutions can initiate their own dialogue. Our speakers have also emphasized that established instances of interreligious dialogue need more active role from the diplomats in diplomacy to make these dialogues sustainable. Thanks to all distinguished panelists and their valuable remarks, now I am closing this conference. On behalf of the International Relations, Institute of International Relations, let me also thank our partners, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic, the Prague Group of Ambassadors of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and Anna Lindh Foundation in organizing this conference, which one more time paved the way for a very engaging and timely discussion. I finally would like to also acknowledge the support of my colleagues at the conference service of the Institute, and without their support, the support of the team of assistants and technical service who have been here since the very early hours of this morning, we would not have the success at this conference. So also thanks to them.